She passed out on me while I held my grandchild. A grin spread over my face. "That baby knows what garbage feels like," my wife commented as she walked in. A snort escaped my daughter's lips. Adapting quickly is her forte. With the caption, "That's our family clown," my son-in-law snapped a photo. Not a word from me. Until she fell asleep, I rocked her. 13 times this morning, my wife begged me to roll back my actions. Just in case. The culmination of my wife, daughter, and son-in-law's decades-long verbal abuse was their public ridicule of me in front of my newborn granddaughter. When the family ATM rebels, they're about to find out what happens next. Obviously, dispose of it. The anguish remains, despite the changing of names. 59 minutes. Unfortunately, I am far from flawless. I have never asserted that I am. I started my construction firm 35 years ago after dropping out of college. My knuckles have hardened. Every day, I wake up with a twisted back. And yes, I am currently experiencing some abdominal pain. Despite this, I never once grumbled about working 60-hour weeks to provide my family a good life and create something out of nothing. This isn't always how my wife Wanda, 57F, was. Our marriage brought her much pride. By the time they were 15, everything had changed. One possible trigger was the fact that her husband still returned home with dirt under his fingernail, while her college friend began to receive promotions. Perhaps it was the day her sister tied the knot with a dentist. I only know that she began making these inane remarks. At first they were more like jokes. Once again, Heath, you're stuck in a muckstorm. Plain old construction worker. No big deal. It did, however, worsen over time. Much worse. Our daughter Malia, who is 32 years old and married to Patrick, who is 34 years old, had a hard time finding a place to live 3 years ago. Everything about this place's housing market is surreal. The rental property I own really pays well. Well, obviously, spending time with loved ones is your first priority. As a result, I agreed to let them move in for less than 50% of the going rent. As soon as Patrick starts explaining his job in tech, which involves computers, my attention wanders. Malia is involved in marketing. They pretend to be broke all the time even though they make good money. 3 years ago, I started charging $1.950 a month for a service that should have earned $2,200. Taking care of any problems that arise by myself. They use our logins to pay for their streaming services. Taking care of their vehicle insurance. Temporarily included in our policy 3 years ago. Keeping an eye on their 8-month-old daughter, Aaliyah. Several times per week at no cost. What am I going to receive in exchange? Unending disdain. Patrick embarrassed me in front of everyone at Christmas by asking if I was competent with a smartphone. For the past 4 years, I've ran my entire company from the same Samsung. Surprisingly, he still writes checks at the grocery store. I told him that when I brought it up. There was a lot of laughter. Not me. Wanda makes these remarks at dinner about how I make her feel embarrassed when we eat there because I always use the wrong fork. We were destitute as children. Apologies for not being able to attend the classes on the fancy fork. I overheard her saying to her sister last month at a family barbecue that Heath exemplifies what occurs when you reach your peak in high school. She played football and wrestling, and I let her. From what I can tell, that is now considered a source of shame. Malia is taking after her mom in every way. I repaired their dishwasher last week, saving them $150 in service fees. My coworker began to explain to Aaliyah, "This is why we want you to go to college, so you won't have to crawl around on floors when you're grandpa's age." I was captivated by her words. I carried on with my task. Everything fell apart for me 2 days ago. As they went out for a wine tasting, I kept an eye on Aaliyah. That tiny girl means the world to me. To my knowledge, no one else in that house reacts positively to my presence like she does. Following the bottle, I was cradling her, drumming and chatting with her. Nothing noteworthy. Simply grandpa matters. She became irritable and puked all over my clothes. "Just your average baby things, huh?" Grinning, I reassured her things would be all right. We began to pick up after each other. At that point, they all came in from their wine outing ahead of schedule. "The infant knows what it's like to be garbage," Wanda told me as she stared at me rather than offering any assistance. You read it correctly. My own spouse. Malia scoffed and claimed to pick things up quickly. I shot a picture with my phone and remarked, "That's our family clown right there." Then Patrick did the same. I felt like I was being made fun of. Silence was mine. Continually attended to the baby's needs. Placed her in her crib after rocking her to sleep, and then returned home. About half an hour later, Wanda returned home, but she was immediately griping about something else and still hadn't acknowledged what had transpired. I was up all night that night. Recurred visions of their faces. Receiving their statements. A baby can feel the texture of trash. Married life for 35 years. A single daughter. An adoring grandchild of mine. They perceive me in that light. The trash of the family. Comedian in the family. I decided to make a few calls yesterday morning while Wanda was at her yoga session. Very important phone calls. Many calls that have been delayed. I may be clueless about which fork to use at a fine dining establishment, but my family has no idea how the financial system works. Anyone can tell me who foots the bill in this family. Even though Patrick claims no one knows about his problem with internet gambling, I am aware of it. While he's on our house Wi-Fi, I look through the router's records. Wanda has a hidden credit card that is nearly maxed out, and I am aware of this. I am quite aware of how utterly reliant on poor Heath they are monetarily. For the first time in years, I felt calm by the time I finished those calls. In preparation for the impending storm, I retired to the garage, where I popped open a beer. My phone began ringing at 6:43 in the morning. Wanda was the one. Malia followed. Patrick came next. The next stop is Wanda. I received a total of 13 calls as I sipped my coffee and watched the sunrise. 13 long, frantic messages left on voicemail. I have not yet returned their call. Being someone's doormat for decades causes them to forget that you have the power to stand up whenever you desire. They're going to recall it all soon. Wow, NGL, it was crazy to wake up to thousands of notifications. To some of you, I may be engaging in karma farming. I hope so. My real life looks like this, sadly. Continuing from where we left off, my relatives made fun of me in front of my granddaughter, referring to me as the family clown and calling me rubbish. I ignored 13 of their more urgent calls the following morning after making a few calls. Then what did I do? Please allow me to explain it in simpler terms. I have served as the family bank for many years. People who clearly value dirt beneath their fingernails more than I do end up getting the majority of my income. Their approval was necessary for my retirement plan, which had been in the works for 3 years. I chose to quit from being their ATM immediately after the garbage incident. Do you recall that I brought up Patrick's gambling habit? It's more serious than I first indicated. This individual has spent over $65,000 in the last 2 years on online poker and sports betting. The router logs show otherwise, notwithstanding his confidence in covert browsing. Even when I go by to fix them, the collection notifications I've seen in their mail don't work. Malia is clueless. The letter has been intercepted and notifications have been hidden by Patrick. My beloved wife of 35 years, Wanda, has a problem with compulsive buying. There are 3 hidden credit cards that I found out about when a statement ended up at our house instead of her sister's. Supposedly, I am unaware of the $42,000 in debt that she is presently carrying. Clothes, jewelry, and designer handbags. While insisting that we should be more frugal next time, I need to get work boots. The goal of my scheme was not vengeance. Reality was the theme. My attorney, please arrive first. Schedule a meeting for later that day to go over my options for asset protection. Property management firm, second call. Advised them that the rental rate for Malia and Patrick's house would be changed to reflect its market value starting immediately. $2,200 per month as opposed to $950. Within 48 hours, you will receive formal notification. On the 3rd ring, my bank. I have begun to secure my savings by creating several accounts. Call number 4. Insurance provider. Patrick and Malia's vehicles are no longer covered by our insurance. 5th contact. Bookkeeper. Had a conversation about reorganizing my company so that my retirement savings would be safe. The framework was completed by midday. I wasn't trying to exact revenge. I was just coming to a halt. ending the unending transfer of funds from my account to theirs, refusing to provide money to those that treat me like trash. Following that, I returned to my residence and patiently awaited my turn. Wanda returned from her yoga session at approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Initially, she pretended to be innocent, making a fuss over a female student's unflattering leggings in class. At the kitchen table, I sat, responding very little as I scrolled through my phone. It was then that a notification sounded on her phone. With me as a correspondent, my attorney had emailed her. I am writing to confirm our scheduled meeting to go over the possible asset separation and financial restructuring. In the span of 3 seconds, her expression transformed from irritated to pallid. She began by asking a question. I don't understand. Has someone else entered my life? Was I going crazy? I preserved my replies. I never cheated. No, I was quite rational. Indeed, I had at last located it. In the blink of an eye, her demeanor shifted from sour to sweet. Suddenly, I was no longer the trash can dweller in my family. I was honey and darling. My lunch was consumed in its whole. My inbox from Malia went into overdrive at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In order to arrange for the notice of rent increase to be delivered, the property management business had contacted. She wished someone would tell her if this was an error. A single word was the response I received via text message. No. Calling from Patrick came 10 minutes later. Voicemail was the destination. He was increasingly desperate in each of the 4 messages he left. When he finally asked if I could buy them time to sort things out in the last one, his voice quivered. The fear had set in by the time dinner was served. After reviewing our joint accounts, she noticed that I had withdrawn the majority of the funds, leaving barely enough to pay our normal expenditures. As she sobbed, she claimed she couldn't fathom what had possessed me. Regarding the trash statement, I brought it up again. She made an attempt at humor by claiming I was being overly sensitive. Afterwards, I handed her the copies of her clandestine credit card statement. Observing her expression was like being a witness to a spectral phenomenon. With her jaw moving like a fish's, she slumped into the kitchen chair. Unlike any other time in our marriage, Wanda was completely silent. For that night, I slept in the guest bedroom. It was not because she specifically requested it. Simply put, being in her presence was too much for me. Notifications were constantly ringing my phone. I set it to silent mode. I had a meeting with my lawyer the following morning. We discussed potential solutions for 2 hours. Perhaps not dissolution of the marriage, but definitely safety. I had already begun recording everything when he suggested it. All of it, every harsh remark, every financial deceit. Upon returning home, I discovered Malia seated on our driveway. In the rear, Malia was seated in her car seat. Using my granddaughter in that way was just uncalled for. Seeing that small face nearly made me give in, but then I recalled how they laughed at me as I was covered in baby vomit. Malia initially attempted the waterworks. After that failed, she resorted to fury. Why would I subject children to this? The new rate would make it impossible for them to pay rent next month. Something had to give. Because her grandfather was experiencing a midlife crisis, did I want my granddaughter to live in an unsafe apartment? I questioned if she was aware of Patrick's gambling while making eye contact with her. Her expression shifted, and I knew it. Little did she know. I advised that, before fretting over the rent for the following month, she inquire with him about the $65,000. Prior to her emotional departure, I made sure to kiss Aaliyah goodbye. I struggled mightily with that section. By the weekend's end, tensions had risen. When Patrick came up at my place of employment, he made a big deal. He went from pleading with me to threatening to cut off all contact with Aaliyah unless I desist. Just in case, I decided to record it all on my phone. After I stood firm on the money changes, Wanda briefly lived with her sister. She made one final attempt at manipulation before she departed by inquiring whether my 35 years of marriage had been for nothing. Her question was identical to mine. Now we're 2 weeks in. All of the official notifications have been sent. To safeguard my wealth, my attorney has prepared certain legal paperwork. According to the property management business, Malia and Patrick still haven't paid the updated rent. A notice appeared on my phone last night as I sat alone on my porch, sipping a beer. In a social media post, Patrick had included me as a tag. With that lengthy tirade on the selfish parents of the baby boomer generation who left their families behind, there's that photo of me covered in vomit. There were 3 comments requesting that he remove it and 0 likes. 2 words were all that Malia texted me when I awoke this morning. We ought to have a conversation. Tomorrow, I will meet her for coffee without Patrick. Apparently, she uncovered something on the shared computer that I must view, according to her. What comes next is completely unknown to me. I can't help but feel guilty, particularly in regards to Aaliyah. What, though, is more pleasant than guilt? Honor oneself. After decades of being a doormat, I am no longer one. Look, I'm not trash. Not a clown here. I'm simply a guy who understood the value of standing up for himself. And lastly, report. When you truly cease caring about other people's opinions of you, something peculiar begins to happen. It's as powerful as a superhero. I fretted over being liked for 60 years. At last, I'm sleeping like a baby. I had planned to meet up with Malia for coffee without Patrick when I last left off. On their computer, she claimed to have found something that I had to see. Their horror started with that coffee shop meeting. My emancipation, too. Malia arrived in a state of complete and utter misery. Dirty locks. Red, swollen eyes. Donning her trusty hoodie that she'd owned since her undergraduate days. Just a ring. Quietly, she drew her laptop closer to me. What I witnessed validated all of my suspicions and more. There was no $65,000 in Patrick's gaming debts. It was $112,000 for them. He had used their automobile as collateral for loans. I almost went bankrupt after charging 7 credit cards to their maximum limits and also taking out loans from Aaliyah's college fund, which her grandparents had established. However, it was not all. Emails sent to a woman named Dolores dating back around 18 months. Visual aid. Detailed. Money from accommodation. Images that I would prefer not to view. Optimal aspect. It seems that Patrick had been sending these emails every time they visited by utilizing my Wi-Fi. Where I live. While I was taking care of their child or servicing their garbage disposal. Without cost. I didn't see Malia sobbing. She bawled uncontrollably. Would she and Aaliyah be able to spend some time with me? They asked. It was my agreement. Under certain circumstances. Once again, Daddy wasn't going to be the hero in this case. I had already done other things, but I didn't tell her about them. Do you recall those phone calls I brought up? My attorney and I met, and I ended up putting 90% of my wealth into trusts and other forms of asset protection. Yet I had also dialed a few additional numbers. Regarding Patrick's folks. From him to his supervisor. To the host of the Thursday night poker tournament. I spilled the beans to them. Including payments. His folks were absolutely appalled. Plus, his manager was worried about problems with judgment. His poker friends expelled him from the game. All in less than a day. On top of that, I made a list of all the disparaging things my relatives had said or written about me in emails, texts, and comments over the years. Images captured from the screen. Sounds captured. Everything that is written. Gather everything into a shared folder and discreetly distribute it to Wanda's parents, sister, and closest friends. For a long time, this is how my relatives have dealt with me. This is all for me. Without delay, the SMS messages began to pour in. The sister of Wanda slammed her as repulsive. Her mom felt humiliated. No one in these messages seemed familiar to her best friend from college, according to her. Wanda was homeless by the weekend's conclusion. It was her sister who expelled her. She contacted me 13 further times. Message after message, increasingly frantic. Very well. Meanwhile, Patrick's life was in a tailspin. When Patrick failed to pitch in for alcohol after 3 days, his friend Xavier kicked him out. Nobody to confide in. I don't have any helpful buddies. Card balances exhausted. Debts settled. Arriving at my residence at midnight, he never left. Hitting the door repeatedly. Inebriated, yes. The sight of his daughter caused him to begin yelling. The door remained unopened. I had a complete breakdown and just recorded it all on my doorbell camera before contacting the police through my new security app. Cocaine was discovered in his vehicle. It isn't my concern. The following day, Malia requested emergency custody. At the 2-week mark, Wanda at last cornered me at the supermarket. He trailed behind me while I shopped for veggies, pleading for an explanation every 5 minutes. At that moment, I reached for my phone. "Roll the tape." "Go ahead," he told her. As soon as she saw the zucchini and apples, she started to cry. Spoke exactly what was expected. Sorry, she thought. She had been disgusting. Why? She wondered. Oh, she would totally transform. Same old. I only glanced in her direction and inquired as to whether or not she recalled insulting me in front of our granddaughter. Whether she recalled laughing when Patrick shot the picture was the question posed. She was asked if she could recall the 35 years of minor cuts. I proceeded to leave with my card in hand, leaving her standing there in tears. It was captured on the phones of 3 separate individuals. Before supper, it had made it onto local social media. Is it minor? Sure thing. Does it feel incredible? It did, I'll bet you that. By the 1-month mark, the effects had begun to materialize. After Patrick and Malia failed to pay the second rent installment, the management business began the eviction process. Their credit ratings plummeted. A studio apartment in the city's worst neighborhood was not authorized for Patrick. Wanda found out the hard way how difficult it was to make ends meet on her own. Her pricey subscription at the yoga studio? Gone. The salon visits she has every week? Got the boot. In a high-end SUV? Taken back. At the age of 57, she began the process of finding a roommate. Took on more shifts to supplement my income. They were venturing out into the real world without Heath's protection for the very first time as adults. Of all the girls, only Malia showed signs of real development. Duplicate employment was bestowed upon her. Commenced treatment. Disputed the marriage. Be careful with her credit cards. I informed her that her request to remain wasn't based on charity when she attempted to express her gratitude. She was helping out around the house and was paying less rent. An end to shirking responsible parties. I felt comfortable enough to commit to a group meeting with everyone involved 3 months following the event. This is my home. These are my conditions. They were barely recognizable compared to when they arrived. Aside from not dyeing her hair anymore, Wanda had put on weight. Despite losing 20 pounds, Patrick still fidgeted uncontrollably. In contrast to them, Malia stood her ground. I made my intentions quite plain. As a possible solution, I could think about giving Malia and Aaliyah a hand. For any help, there must be a written repayment plan. Patrick must finish treatment for his gambling addiction, secure employment, and pay child support before he may have unsupervised contact with Aaliyah. I would keep Wanda and myself apart. Intense couples counseling, a post-nuptial agreement, and perpetually separate money would be necessary for any kind of reunion. In the future, zero tolerance for rudeness from anyone would ever be tolerated. After one incident, they will never again be a part of my life. Tears were shed. Arguments. Trying to beg. However, they were all united by the conclusion. They were forced to do it, not because they wished to. It has been 6 months since then. Just where are we at this point? Just last month, Malia and Aaliyah settled into a micro-apartment. She's doing fine with very little assistance from me. She only has a little loan that she pays back on time and does occasional babysitting. After finishing 30 days of inpatient treatment, Patrick secured employment as a package delivery driver. He supervises his visits to Aaliyah twice weekly. He gives me the creeps whenever I pick up the phone, as if I could just end his life. Is that so? 6 therapy sessions have passed between Wanda and me. The pace of progress is poor. Currently, we are not cohabitating. We probably won't do this again. I have unresolved rage, according to the counselor. Not at all. Aaliyah became 1 year old yesterday. A little party at Malia's new apartment. Everyone being incredibly polite. Nothing snarky. Abstain from rolling your eyes. Being awkwardly nice and loving that little kid with all my heart. Aaliyah puked on my shirt once again while I was holding her. Silence fell over the room. No one moved. People looking at the baby and myself alternately. I grinned in her direction. I reassured her it was all right and then began to tidy up after us. Everyone remained silent. You could almost slice through the tension. At that point, I raised an eyebrow at my entire family, the ones who had treated me like trash for so long, and asked, "Anyone care to weigh in on this?" "Does anybody?" They were all staring at the ground. Patrick retreated in a very real sense. A napkin occupied Wanda's attention. Malia swiftly refrained from responding. I knew it then. Victory was mine. 100%. Can we call this a wrap? Absolute venom. Family dynamics are complex. However, the previous dynamism has long since died. There is a basic truth that my family now knows. Please do not take me for granted. My name is not ATM. I am serious. There are times when a simple plan is the greatest way to exact revenge. Just stand back and let other people deal with the fallout of their own choices. They have no chance against me when I'm chilled with a beer and my retirement fund is full.